Hey, what's up you guys, it's Dorothy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to go into part 2 of chapter 5 of 4 Perfect Pebbles by Lila Pearl and Marion Blumenthal-Lazan. So let's get right into this video. This video is going to contain sensitive topics and foul language. If you do not wish to continue, I suggest you click off the video now. You have been warned. Bergen-Belsen II had a crematorium. Its high square chimney was similar in appearance to that of Auschwitz, but its chief use was to burn the bodies of those who had died of natural causes, starvation, exhaustion, and disease. Later, as the camp filled beyond its capacity, the crematorium could no longer keep up with the body count. The dead at Bergen-Belsen were then burned in open pits, tossed into mass graves, or even strewn about above ground. The stench of burning flesh from those open pits, Marion said, remains in my nostril to this day. It was even worse than the foul odors of disease, decay, and lack of sanitation that we drew in with every breath. Slowly starting with the Allies' D-Day invasion of France in June 1944, the war began to turn against the Germans. At the same time, the Russians were gradually closing in from the east, but at Bergen-Belsen in the autumn of 1944, the worst was yet to come. To hide the evidence of Auschwitz and the other death camps in Poland, the SS now began to drive its prisoners back to the interior of Germany. Bergen-Belsen was to receive an especially large influx, and the Starlanger edition wooden barracks were being built, but they were not ready in time for transport of more than 3,600 women from Auschwitz-Birkenau. In the cold and wet of autumn, the women were crammed into a tent city with a latrine dug in the mud. For the Blumenthals and their fellow prisoners, the winter of 1944 to 1945 proved the most difficult yet. Food had become extremely scarce, and there was no longer enough water for bathing, washing clothes, or even drinking. The cold was intense. As I had learned to do the winter before, Marion explained, I followed the advice of the older women to prevent frostbite of my fingers and toes. After standing at roll call sometimes for hours, we would return to our barracks and warm our extremities with our own urine. Now one of my main occupations was to pick the lice from my clothing one by one and destroy them with my fingernails. Our bodies, our hair, our blankets, all were infested, for the barracks themselves were crawling with lice because of the overcrowded and unclean conditions. Hair lice laid their eggs, called nits, in our hair. Clothing lice preferred the seams of our garments and our bedding. I remember one garment I loved and tried to preserve. It was an off-white hand-knitted wool cardigan with short sleeves that someone had made for me in Westerbork. Somehow it stretched to fit me as I grew. I still wore it in Bergen-Belsen, for there my body weight was actually decreasing because of the growing hunger. But by the early months of 1945, the food at Bergen-Belsen consisted mainly of cabbage-flavored water and moldy bread. This ration was far less than the 600 calories a day per inmate that the camp had formerly provided. The prisoners found themselves longing for the turnip soup with bits of gristly horse meat and the pats of yellow grease called butter that they had received in better days. Despite the total breakdown in the food supply and in sanitary conditions, the SS continued to concentrate on preventing escape. Daily roll calls went on for hours in the numbing cold. The police dogs, so dangerous that their handlers had to wear thick armed guards and carry dog whips and pistols, continued to terrify the shivering inmates standing in a pell. The death toll was now mounting rapidly as the result of exposure, hunger, severe diarrhea, and fevers. In addition, as the winter drew in to an end, the lice-borne disease known as typhus began to spread throughout the camp. Its symptoms were high fever, a red rash, headache, and delirium, often resulting in death. By March 1945, 35,000 out of 60,000 prisoners at Bergen-Belsen had died, mainly of typhus. Yes, Marion said, death had become a moment-to-moment occurrence. In our dark, crowded quarters, we often tripped and fell over the newly dead. Their bodies could not be taken away quickly enough. Yet even with these terrible sights all around us, even with the stench of the overflowing latrines in our nostrils, those of us who could still function yearned above all for food. Bread came first among our longings, which we called the 3 B's. Bread, bed, and bath, for food was survival. One evening in early April 1945, Mama, who still worked in the kitchen, was able to smuggle some potatoes, turnips, and salt into our barrack. She also brought an empty can, and with some splintered wood from our bed slats, she managed to build a small fire over which to cook a soup. We had carefully chosen a place on the uppermost bed of a triple-decker bunk where we and some others could shield our illegal and dangerous activity. The soup took a long time to cook. It was still bubbling away and was almost done when Mama and I heard the sound of the guards approaching for a surprise visit. I was sitting on the bed near the pot of soup with my right leg bent at the knee. In our haste to cover up what we were doing, we tipped over the pot and the boiling soup spilled across my legs, scalding the lower part from the knee down. I was just a few months past my 10th birthday, but I did not utter a sound. I knew better than to cry out. In our 14 months at Bergen-Belsen, the Nazis had tried to break us physically, spiritually, and emotionally. This forced us to learn self-discipline the hard way. Perhaps it was good that I had always been stubborn and strong-willed. Mama and I lost the soup that evening, but not our lives. Medical treatment of any kind had long ceased to be available at the camp, which was now in a state of almost complete turmoil. The war, it was rumored, would be over soon. Allied bombers roared overhead even during daylight hours, while at night the rumbling of Allied artillery could be heard shelling western front German cities. Would the camp commandant, Joseph Kramer, the notorious Beast of Belsen, surrender the camp peacefully, or would he order his SS to attempt a last stand, resulting in mass murder? For some 8,000 prisoners, the Blumenthals among them, the outcome would remain in question. Within days of the boiling soup accident that had severely burned Marion's leg, the members of her family learned that they were to be evacuated to the east. On April 9, 1945, Marion said, "We were marched to the station and put aboard a long train of cattle cars. My leg was now infected and oozing a thick yellow pus. The pain was very great and I could not walk. We did not know that Auschwitz had been liberated by the Russians in January 1945, and we were sure that was where the Germans were sending us. It made no sense for them to ship us east when other prisoners were being evacuated to the west, but that was how it appeared, and we were given no explanation of anything. Once more, this time so close to the war's end, it seemed that our chances for survival were being snatched away from us, and that death loomed closer than ever. 6 days later, on April 15, 1945, British troops reached Bergen-Belsen and liberated the camp. The commandant, Joseph Kramer, gave it up without a struggle. He was later tried by a British military court and hanged. The thousands of prisoners who were still alive were freed and cared for, but the Blumenthals were not among them. That is the end of chapter 5. I will see you guys in the next video for chapter 6. Bye.